Welcome to NMS. Let's talk about quad movements, and let's talk about it from a perspective of what's actually proven to build the most muscle. And we'll look at research studies, and I'll also talk about my experience, both from when I was younger and also from the fact that I'm trying to rebuild my quads now, what works for me now that I'm in my 50s, okay? So best quad exercises, leg extensions. Now, based on two studies of leg extension, it was found that leg extensions cause significant rectus femoris growth and vastus growth, okay? Vastus medialis, so the middle muscle of your quads, okay? So those two particular muscles grow very well from the leg extension. The reason for that is obviously the rectus femoris joins above onto the hip, whereas the other two quad muscles, and when I say the other two, because really there is 4 quad muscles, but really 2 of them do a very similar thing. But the outer, or vastus lateralis, and the inner, or medialis, they don't join onto the hip, they join onto the femur, okay? So they only extend the knee, whereas the rectus femoris actually flexes the hip, okay? Now, direct isolation, constant tension, and high torque at full knee extension is the reason why the leg extension is so good for building, especially the rectus femoris. Most quad movements don't allow a full contracted position with peak torque at that position, so the leg extension is the best for that. Now, deep squats, high bar or front squats actually work very well for building the quads, okay? The reason that there was greater knee flexion at angles of high loading, okay, is why that they build it, okay? Now, obviously the limitations of the squat is the length of the femur in proportion to the length of the upper body. Now, for a tall person, they're not going to be able to go as deep on a squat, and that is what makes squats, for tall people, not the best movement, okay? But they are very good for people who have good proportions. So if you're a relatively short person and you've got a longer torso, you're going to get a lot out of the squat. In fact, it's probably going to build your legs about as good as any quad movement, okay? Hack squats and leg press. Now, the advantage of a hack squat and a leg press, right, is the fact that you don't have to worry about balance limitations, and you can actually get a deeper knee flexion and not as much of a hip flexion with the hack squat, okay? And same with the leg press, and that allows you to get more quad activation in those two movements. But once again, the advantage to taller people isn't always the advantage to shorter people. So if you've got shorter legs and shorter femurs, you're probably not going to get the same advantage as a taller person, okay? But they do actually work, and they've been proven to work very well. Now, Bulgarian split squats versus split squats. Now, a Bulgarian split squat, you put your back foot up, okay? A split squat, you don't actually put your back foot up. So it's like a lunge, okay? The difference between a split squat and a Bulgarian split squat is that you are going to get deeper knee flexion, okay? And because of that, you're going to get a greater amount of load on the quads, especially in the stretch position. And from this, you're potentially going to get more growth. And there's also stability demands from the split squat, and Bulgarian split squat especially, that can actually stimulate more growth, okay? So the actual balancing of the movement. Step ups. Now, a lot of people don't look up at step ups as being a very good quad movement, but it's very good, okay? But you have to actually have a greater than 90-degree flexion in your knee to do it. So MRI studies are showing that you can get good, strong quad hypertrophy, but you have to have a high step, okay? Now, that's going to be a problem with some people who don't have the balance and that ability to balance themselves and use the quad muscles. Maybe they do actually have imbalances and they don't have enough, say, glute strength as well to balance them out, okay? So step-ups are a very advanced movement, but if you're very good at them and you can balance yourself, they can be great for building quads. Now, what are the takeaways from basically most of the studies that I've looked at? Depth is king. Deep knee flexion is king. Now, most people know that, you've got to get more actual knee bend to go and get more quad growth. Isolation works very well. So leg extensions, they got dismissed for many years, but they're actually a very good movement. Variety helps. Okay, so getting variety means that maybe you hit different parts of the quad. Okay, some hit more the vastus lateralis, some hit more the vastus medialis, some hit more the rectus femoris. Okay, so having a good combination of squats, maybe leg press, maybe an extension movement will hit all parts of the quads. Now, based on a 7-week study, the vastus lateralis, okay, there was good growth in that, good growth in the medialis, but not as much in the femoris, and the vastus intermedius, not as much growth. Now, effects were moderate to large, okay, but it depended on which joint you actually extended or flexed. Now, as already mentioned, leg extensions are very good for actually working the rectus femoris. So squats were not quite as good for doing that particular area. Now, another study compared full range of movement with half squats. There was actually not as much difference between the two from a full squat to a half squat. Now, that can be very important because a lot of people think, butt to calves and all that sort of thing. But if you actually get very good quad activation in the squats, maybe if you're a tall person, you don't have to go as deep as what a shorter person has to go, okay? So don't always get caught out that, I've got to go as deep as I can, therefore squats are not as good for me. They can still get good gains. You're not going to get the same glute gains in a squat, though, if you don't go as deep. So, if you're after just quads, you probably actually get more from half squats than you will from full squats if you're a taller person. Now, flywheel inertia squats. Not a lot of people do these. I have never had one at my gym. Okay, what it basically is you've got a flywheel. It's got resistance. Okay, and what that does is put more constant resistance on the quad, so you'll get more in the top. I like bands for that reason. Now, flywheel inertia squats will probably do something similar, but if you put bands around the bar, you'll get more quad activation in the top of the movement because you're now getting more load in the top of the movement. But a flywheel inertia squat can actually put a great amount of quad stimulation, and actually in studies after 14 days, it showed a 5.5% increase and a volume increase of 8.6% based on MRI. So if you have one of these in the gym, maybe give it a go. I've never seen one in my gym, but that doesn't mean that maybe some gyms are going to get them in. Leg extensions versus, obviously, you got conventional and isokinetic. Isokinetic obviously means you hold the top position, okay? Conventional knee extensions get greater growth, so it's not as important to do a hold in the top. It's actually more important to get a slow negative and a controlled positive and a nice, maybe a little bit of a squeeze at the top. You don't have to hold it, okay? This basically highlights the strong selective growth of the rectus femoris with isolation work, okay? Now, leg press, different ranges of motion. This was tested over an 8-week course, and it was actually shown that a 5 to 100 degree knee flexion versus a 5 to 154 degree knee flexion, similar amounts of growth, okay? So a lot of people do these really deep leg presses. You don't need to do that to actually get good growth, but you do need to go greater than a 90 degree bend. So no real hypertrophy increase from going deeper in a leg press, potentially more chance of injury. And I have seen people pop, a quad doing those sorts of things, or actually do damage to their tendon in their knee. So really important that you guys understand that. Now, my takeaway from all this is that basically with quads, a very important thing, and obviously a lot of studies don't talk about this, is being able to control your core. So if you're flexing at the core, so you're bending your back, okay, you're not keeping your core tight, you're not learning how to use your lats and your scapular muscles to keep your upper body in check when you're doing a squat. Weaker upper back muscles and lower back muscles when you're doing, say, a front squat. not holding the core tight and allowing your back to lift when you're doing a leg press or when you're doing a hack squat. When you're doing a leg extension, allowing your butt to lift off so you don't get the same amount of tension in the bottom of a leg extension. All of these factors play a part in whether you're going to get maximum quad stimulation. So it's all well and good to go and do good depth, but you have to hold your core tight and you have to have good upper body stability for your legs to work better, okay? And it's really important that you remember that, because just because you're going deep in a squat, if you don't have control in the core and you're flexing your spine, your quads aren't moving, are not working as much as what someone who has good core stability would do for their quads. Okay, so it's really important, guys, that you understand upper body and core stability, right, will actually increase the tension on the quads. So don't forget that when you're actually doing your quad movements, that core stability, and of course the upper body stability. So engage your lats, engage your upper back muscles. Thanks for listening, guys. Any questions, by all means comment, but it is important to understand what does actually work for different muscle groups. I'm going to be presenting more videos on all the different muscle groups, what actually makes them grow the most and why. Okay, look out for those videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and please help me out with this channel and we'll build it, and I'll give you a lot more information on hypertrophy, fat loss, muscle gain, all the different things that make progress in the gym much more consistent. Thanks for listening.